Welcome everybody to a special edition of CZI annual conference, and this is the pre-conference. So I learned a thing or two, and we have someone who is an expert who's actually running a masterclass at this conference, and the name is, let me make sure that I actually pronounce this right, Sofia.
Excellent.
Oh, fantastic. What does that actually mean?
Oh,
well, I know Sofia, what Sofia means, but your surname. And where's that coming from?
Oh, that's a good story, actually.
We're ready for it.
So, my father, I'm from Sweden. The second largest city is called Gothenburg, right?
Yeah.
My father was born at a part of that city which was called Svingen. And he wanted to take a surname, which he could, like this was in 67 or 8, right? That had that as the first part, Sving. And then the ending had to be something that did not bear any similarity to something that was royal, because that wasn't allowed during that time. So we had swing, and then we had B, and B-I, is actually village. So it's a swing village.
Wow, interesting. Huh? And going in with this, you're a future strategist and senior advisor.
I'm a senior advisor at Enact Sustainable Strategies. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Though sustainability is obviously future-proofing both planet and business opportunities.
Okay, so this is beyond reporting and compliance, embedding sustainability in business strategy and business model innovation.
That's it, yes.
Okay, so could you please explain that?
Okay, yes. So basically, how do we find ways of embedding sustainability into our business strategies? That is what I try to work for. That's what I try to share, and what I also continuously try to learn, as I've been working with sustainability for the last 20 plus years. So going from seeing sustainability as a nice to have or a compliance issue that someone else wants you to have, to something that you really want to have because it's good for your business. And that's, I think, is a journey that we as practitioners and professionals within the sustainability field have been doing collectively, as has most of industry. And I've also made that journey, I think, personally, to say I've been in operations, I've been heading the sustainability function for a really big global multinational company, I've been in the International Development Corporation, and I'm an advisor. So how do you go from the margins to the center? That's what embedding sustainability is all about. And of course, the background to that is there is no other way to go into the future. The way that we've been doing business up until now is what got us into the problems that we now see. Obviously, we also have lots of benefits from the Industrial Revolution and all of that. Many people that have been lifted out of poverty. Yes, lots of good things. Okay. But we did it.
So internationally, why do you think that sustainability is now the center and focus of business? And especially with millennials and Gen Z, I think this is an important thing. And it hasn't been so in the last 40 years. Why has this grabbed our attention internationally?
It's a good question. I'm not sure whether there is a straight answer to that. I think it's probably a combination of different aspects. One is perhaps the state of the planet. We are actually now seeing the effects of the climate change that we were predicting already since the 80s, right? We've been knowing as a community that this should be coming, and now we're feeling it. I think that's one aspect. And the other aspect is also that perhaps that maturity curve that I talked about is we now learned that there are other ways of doing business than when we started out, so to speak, right? And also, so perhaps we are all learning, and perhaps also social media and the transparency also gives rise to this interest in actually knowing who you're dealing with, who you're buying from, and that also younger people identify much more with brands or in a different way than perhaps we did. And then you want to identify with something that is beneficial, that is good, that is resilient or sustainable.
No.
So perhaps all those three. I'm not sure.
That's phenomenal. Because you come from Sweden, could you give us an idea of what it actually looks like? What does a business or an ecosystem that is sustainable, what does that actually look like in the first world?
It's a good question. I have to think about that for a microsecond, right? What is the ecosystem? I think what I left out, the reply for your previous question was regulation, right? So the actual playing field that the government or regulation puts out there for companies. I think that is a very fundamental driver or barrier for sustainability. So getting back to your question now is, Swedish society is an advanced welfare society. Also has industrialized in a very advanced way. We have a business base that is very much reliant still on a few very big companies that were founded already in 1870s and have been able to stay innovative and competitive more than 150 years. They are a very big part of that ecosystem. So they work with smaller companies and support them, and in partnerships support their innovation, but sometimes also get their innovations. And when it comes to sustainability, they also work together in partnerships. So I think that big companies who have the maturity to invest in or understand the importance of sustainability, that drive the whole ecosystem, also the smaller businesses, together with a regulated level playing field that incentivizes sustainability is part of the equation.
Yeah, when I think of Scandinavia, actually, it is kind of like a flag bearer for sustainability. Just in general, in terms of if you look at the bike usage, if you look at, and the population's adoption of electric vehicles, I think the attitude of the average person in that part of the world is very mindful when it comes to sustainability. So obviously, in terms of the education and getting the word out, it's a success story. And so for me, the question is, for us here in Africa in general and Zimbabwe in particular, how can we, what are the lessons, from Scandinavia, places like Sweden, where this message has been embraced by the average citizen? How do we, how can we emulate that in this part of the world and get the word out and get the average citizen to embrace it and own it?
That's an excellent question. I wish I had the answer, but I think part of the answer is the discussion that is ongoing in society. What are the conversations that are given place? But the other part of that answer, I think, is basic education. So what we've actually seen now, both in basic and higher education, is that sustainability is part of that. So small kids, they are being trained on how to recycle from the age of 8, for instance. So it's kind of a natural way for them to see that what they do has an impact on the natural environment. So I think that's part. So training or education. Universities now teach sustainability also as a freestanding course, but also, for instance, the business management training have sustainability embedded in their education. So I think that has a big role in it. But having said that, I'm not so sure that everyone in Sweden really buys into sustainability for real, right? Because buying into sustainability for real also means that you are prepared to change or demand change of the system, right? But it's also both your individual actions, but also how the system that we all work within, how that can transform into something different. And that is a different thing than wanting to recycle.
Do you think the different generations that has played a role, that Gen Z is more amenable and more...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Greta Thunberg, she is Swedish.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she was, the big hero, right?
Yeah.
Now she has stepped back a bit from the climate issue. But I think there was a time where there was a really surge of this generational engagement, emanating from that. But I think all over the world, younger generations are demanding a different kind of future.
Yeah. And maybe, because you talk about regulation, so let's get into policy. What is the Scandinavian, or in more particular, the Swedish government, what has it done as far as the policy framework to inculcate and to encourage sustainability in business?
It's a quite wide array of things that I've done since decades. So if we look at, start with putting the foundation in place, what you cannot do, right? So environmental regulation for, stopping pollution, for instance. That's putting the basics in place. And I think that framework and that playing field that I mentioned before, that's where you need to then put in business, entrepreneurship and drive and energy, and then we make the best within those frames, right? And that's, I think, what Swedish authorities and governments and policies have been quite successful in doing. So regulating the worst, but also incentivizing doing something positive. So for instance, we've had carbon tax, one of the first, or even perhaps first country in the world, 1994, if I'm not mistaken.
That was early. Yeah.
So we've had that carbon tax since then. So that's one concrete example of what has been done.
Oh, fantastic. And when you look at, so you've got government as a regulator, but let's look at parliament and let's look at the laws themselves. What was the interaction between the lawmakers and society and business? Is there a way you're going about it, or is just conversation, like you said earlier on? Or is there a framework in which that can happen, those discussions can happen?
I'm not sure that I have that full insight, but I can give you a kind of a general answer.
Yeah.
So Sweden is a society where the private sector is strong, but also the labor union sectors are strong. And now we're talking about perhaps social aspects of of sustainability. So what we have is a pretty unique situation where private companies and trade unions work together for the productivity of the companies. That came to place in 1938 after devastating strikes where people were killed. So there was this handshake between labor to employers and laborers. And I think that model is also feeding into other ways of working from society, from labor unions and businesses, finding partnerships where we see the common interest. So CZI's, the Swedish CZI, for instance, is of course constantly in dialogue with the government. And right now, they are the ones that are pushing for harder climate and emission rules and really working to achieve ambitious climate targets more than the government is. That has not always been the case. But now, because it's such a clear business case, when it comes to renewable energy and emissions and finding those low carbon solutions for Swedish business, they are driving that very, very, very hard.
Okay. Oh, fantastic. Interesting. Well, maybe let's actually get into the weeds of your presentation here at CZI. Would you like to give our greater audience, we've got about 10,000 subscribers, really give them a glimpse of what you actually spoke about?
Okay, yes. Yeah. So I talked about the drivers for sustainability, and we've heard before there were 4 drivers that I mentioned. So your license to operate, your social license to operate, right? So what do the community think about you? Are you a corporate citizen that you want to have where you are? We talked about the license to capital. Can you gain access to capital by showing that you have resilience for the future, being a good investment? We talked about legal license. I mean, it's basically, do you comply, right? It's a ticket to play. Either you have it or you haven't got it. So it's pretty clear. And now I forget the 4th one. So market license.
Market, yeah.
So what do your customers want from you?
Okay.
And increasingly, because we are all more or less directly or indirectly part of a multinational value chain, you will be asked to meet more and more hard requirements on working conditions as a supplier to that supply chain or emissions data. So these drivers are all working to push for embedding sustainability, to really make sure that while there are external drivers, that you also find your way of making that your own.
Okay.
So
Interesting. So the equity bit in doing all this would, I suppose, translate to goodwill? How would we account for all this in our financial statements?
well, I wouldn't say goodwill. I would say there are aspects that you could financially account right away, right? So,
Okay.
you could put it this way: are you doing it to save cost or to make money? Right? Both of those are easily accounted for in monetary terms.
Okay.
So energy efficiency or whatever,
Yes.
right? Or it could also be injuries in your workforce. That's easily quantifiable. It can very much have a financial effect on productivity or contingency, continuity or stoppage. If you have unsafe working conditions, that will have an impact on your baseline.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that sustainability gets a bad rap for is it's perceived as a cost, as a cost center, as a compliance issue. The business community for the longest time hasn't actually looked at it as an opportunity in the way you've presented it, in terms of cutting costs and actually, if you're doing better in the market, you're selling more, and if you've got a more resilient, sustainable business model, chances are you can raise capital cheaper or more easily than a business that's riskier. Do you think? So and you mentioned you've been at this for a couple of decades now. Do you think that the message is changing and is being packaged better and being received differently from the business community now?
Yes, for sure. I think where we started was the kind of philanthropy angle, right? So perhaps back to goodwill. Yes, but there is the reputational risk angle to this too. Still is, obviously, because you want to be attractive employer, you want to be an attractive customer, suppliers also from a reputational perspective. But yes, we've been moving from looking at this from a philanthropic kind of view. We do this, we earn our money, and then we choose to give away some money to the people we think deserve it, right? Or the cause. To really see, we have to embed this in our business strategies in order to make this work for our business, because this is not going away, and that makes us more prone to innovate about the ways we're doing, creating efficiencies where there previously were inefficiencies, for instance, in resource or materials or productivity lines, for instance. And now I think we are actually almost at a point where we think that we had already succeeded, because we've been talking so much about sustainability. All over the world, there's been lots of ambitious targets being set and communicated. And we kind of have the feeling that that was enough, right? So we had all these ambitions, but now we are in the crunch. So how do we deliver on these ambitions? For instance, on climate targets. I think that's where we are now. Everyone is on board, but when we actually need to do stuff that are challenging the business as usual, those may be met with barriers.
Wow. Well, thank you very much, Sofia. This was riveting. I'm looking forward to hearing more and following more on the work that you're actually doing, and especially with CZI and how that will translate to Zimbabwe. Yeah. So
Thank you so
very
much.
Yeah,
Enjoy.
Thanks for
Thanks a
having
lot.
me.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Cheers.